A loved one has just passed away, and in addition to the emotional circumstances, there are several legal and logistical hurdles that arise. And so today we're breaking down the probate process in Michigan in a simplified and easy to understand way. That way you can walk away with having a better foundation of the probate process. Hello, I'm Alex Craig, a Michigan real estate agent specializing in helping families sell their loved one's home without the stress and costly mistakes. I'm joined here today by Nick Leydorf, a Michigan estate and elder law attorney. He helps families protect, preserve, and honor their families' legacies. Doing this kind of collaboration, I do believe that we're going to be able to help our community and families in Michigan by being able to provide kind of a more complete perspective of estates and probates by offering a real estate perspective as well as a law perspective. All right, so for the most part, there's a lot of complexity around settling an estate once a loved one passes away. So I figured the easiest place for us to start is kind of with some simple definitions. So I'm going to challenge you without any of using any legalese, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Give me your simple definition of, let's just start with the word kind of estate, because I know
Yep.
sometimes in people's head, they'll start to use these words all interchangeably, and we know that they're all not the same.
Yep. Cool. Thanks for having me, Alex. Appreciate it. I'll try and non-legal non-legalese. So your estate is essentially what you is in your name when you die. All your stuff. So stuff that's in your name when you die. So like if you have a house and you it's titled in your name only and you die, that's going to be part of your probate estate. So that's just you think of it that way. That's probably the easiest thing to think about it.
Okay. Yep, yep. And then how about let's look at specifically kind of the different roles that are usually involved in the process. Obviously, we have like sometimes you'll see a lot of the words executors, administrator, personal representatives, etc. How about that? Can you kind of explain those different roles and what we're looking at?
Yep. So I'm going to use executor and personal representative interchangeably. In the Michigan Probate Code, we refer to it as a personal representative. You may hear it on TV as like executor. So like they're the same thing. It's basically who's in charge of your stuff and your estate when you pass. So who's going to distribute those assets to your loved ones, and it may be a loved one that's the personal representative. It may not. And usually it can be um, that role is filled by either what you put in your will, or if you don't have a will, then you're someone who applies to be the personal representative with the probate court. So those are the two ways that you can be named as a personal representative.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you think you kind of tend to see the most? Do you usually find that a lot of people are going, obviously having to go through probate without a will, or do you see it, most people at least have some sort of a basic will?
Unfortunately, people don't have a will. And yeah, if you don't have a will, then you're just kind of leaving it up to the state to make distributions, and the state's just like you know, uh, it's a disinterested default rule that applies to you, and it's probably not the way the state's going to divide the assets are 100% guaranteed. It's probably the way that you don't want to decide to divide those assets. So yeah, um, that even just doing something, I just tell everybody doing something, at least talking with somebody to get everything in order to prevent probate. Um, that's a big part of my job, but I'd much rather like it if there's a seamless transition of everything from the owner to loved one or whoever they want to receive their stuff. So your state. So yeah, yeah. But by and large, it's a people not doing anything. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And then so once a loved one dies, because I know a lot of times people will be on different, I guess, timelines or a process. Sometimes obviously a loved one may die and it could be months before somebody's really even considering opening up an estate or probate. I was just kind of wondering if you could walk through that process of
Yeah.
kind of how do we go about opening up probate, as well as whose responsibility is it, especially since focusing mostly on, since you said nobody really tends to leave a will. Is it kind of first come, first serve? What's that kind of process look like?
Yeah, so if you don't leave a will, there's a list of priorities, people that have priority to become the personal representative. So usually what happens is you've got mom dies with let's say dad dies first, mom dies second. The deed was in both their names, but now they've both passed. So then we've got maybe three children. So after the first person would be the spouse. That would be the first priority to be the executor or personal representative. That person's now deceased. So then we're down to any children of the deceased, or decedent is what we call it. Trying to legalese, which is just called the person that passed. So we've got the three kids. They're all equal priority, and usually the most efficient way to administer an estate is have one person do it. Just for a number of different reasons, logistics, going to a bank, opening an account. You don't need three people there to do it. So by and large, what we want to do is the first thing is someone would call me, or they can go to the court and do this on their own, but it is kind of complex. So they would come to me. We get kind of a family chart of what the heirs are, and then we kind of look at who's going to be the personal representative. Are the other two siblings going to sign off on you not being the personal representative and you being it? So we call that renunciation of your right to be the personal representative. And then there's just a bunch of different uh, forms that are required to be filed with the probate court before we can actually put that in front of a judge to have the personal representative be appointed by the probate court.
Okay, yeah. So I think some of the questions that kind of arise with that is what happens if obviously there is no renunciation, if maybe there's two or three or more siblings that all want to be the personal representative. How long might that kind of delay the probate process, as well as what's kind of the next steps, or what does the journey look like from there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's um, normally the quickest way to get through probate would be what we call an informal application. So what that means is the person that wants to be personal representative has already received the renunciations from the other people that have equal priority. So those two siblings that we used in an example, they've renunciated their right. They've given up the right to be personal representatives. They're not giving up the right to be a beneficiary of the estate, just to do the administrative part, the work part, the work part of it. It's, it can take can be confusing, a lot of things that are entailed in that. So with those renunciations, you can go through informal probate. If we've got the three siblings that are not agreeing on one person and they say we all want to be it, then they can they could object to the petition for this person to be the personal representative, and then there has to be notice given, and then they go in front of a probate judge, and then the judge is going to make a call on who's best fit. Maybe there's joint. Maybe they need to be three people joint personal representatives. Maybe just one. Kind of depends on the mood of a judge at, at the hearing. You're relying on somebody who has no idea of your family, and in like a 10 or 15-minute hearing, you're going to make a call about who's the person that's most best fit to be that individual to administer the estate. So that's kind of formal probate. So that's can take longer. You got to wait for a judge's schedule to open up on something that can give you a hearing date. Informal is more of like an over the counter. We got all your paperwork in order, and you've got your renunciations, you got all your paperwork. Then we're gonna appoint you as personal representative. So that, yeah, formal takes much longer. Informal is as expedited as it can be. It's not quick by any means, but it's, yeah, it's something that can be shorter.
Okay, yeah, and then you've been mentioning like informal and formal, because I think one of the also some of the words that will pop up if you're kind of obviously Googling the internet, maybe using ChatGPT and stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
is
right.
let's call it simplified probate. Kind of, can you
Yeah,
create some clarity around making sure that we're understanding the difference between informal versus formal probate, as well as obviously like simplified probate,
yeah.
that.
So that has to do when you're under an amount of threshold of the total assets of the estate. basically you're just it's an assignment of different assets, kind of similar process. You're not going through the whole process of probate, but it's way more, it's even more simplified and quicker than informal probate. But you're limited in what you can do in those certain circumstances. So that's kind of like there's an account that's, under the dollar value. Um, and so we just want to assign that account to these two heirs. But you're limited in like kind of what you can do in certain circumstances. So yeah, there are kind of three different pathways. Um, Formal being taking the longest, informal, medium, and the baby bear, I guess, is very quick. But you're limited on that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of like look at maybe the real estate specifically in an estate. So we've kind of already explored, once how to get kind of that personal representative or executor of the estate. I think it's important to determine when is really legal authority established and ensuring that people can actually start making the decisions about the property, but not even just the property, but even the belongings or items in a house, obviously, because if it's somebody passes away, but it's not another 8 months until personal representative is assigned, I think the question that kind of arises is when is the legal authority set up, and what issues do we get into if people delay that kind of assignment of a personal representative?
Yeah, we encourage folks to like try and apply as soon as possible. If there's going to be issues about personal property, then that can allow the appointed personal representative to maybe secure the home so that people aren't removing items of personal property from the house. Um, it's going to be difficult to prove sometimes in probate court that um, Sally went in and removed mom's jewelry and things like that because we just don't know. She may have a key to the house, and she is not entitled to those more than likely unless it's in some sort of will. So yeah, it gets really messy, and there's kind of a gap in the law in that time frame because someone needs to be able to act to preserve the assets of the estate, and we don't really get to that point until we get someone that's appointed personal representative.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, so I take out of that it's extremely important. I mean, hopefully, if somebody's watching this video, loved one just passed away, and I know there's all of this emotional turmoil. Hopefully, that they're still able to begin that process of probate. So, like you said, the sooner we can start this process, the more we can preserve these assets and sort of secure the home, like you mentioned.
Yep.
Absolutely. I just have two here, like kind of what would you say sort of the do's and don'ts maybe that you see when it comes to real estate as far as probate? Obviously, a lot of the emotions are high, and then so sort of what kind of common mistakes you see like the do's and don'ts with real estate and probate.
Yeah, I think that one of the like the dues that people should and people don't is uh getting an appraisal. I think that's something that the court's going to look at fair market value um throughout the probate process as two times SEV value or state equalized value. You look that on your tax bill, you can figure out what that is. That may not be what the market will hold. So like it may be much more than that. Especially, I'm sure Alex, you kind of know this. Like things are, it's great for business for you. Things are kind of crazy, right? So like, how do what fair market value is maybe higher than what state equalized value is. So that's something because then as a personal representative, you've done your what we call due diligence, like you've done your job to responsibly act on behalf of the state. And I think that's sometimes what people don't do. Um, and I think one thing that another, I mean, is unfortunately probate's kind of set up to protect creditors in Michigan. I'm just gonna be honest. People are like surprised about that, but that's really what it's for. Like it's set up to protect you. I mean, we could get the relatives around 3 days after the person that has passed, and we can divide up all the assets like you see in movies where they read the will and we're just going to divide everything up. But unfortunately, probate is going to be once you have to publish a notice, you've got to wait 4 months for a creditor period to end. We're just kind of in limbo during that 4 months. So, and then the statute in Michigan says that a probate cannot be closed any sooner than 5 months filing than the appointment of the personal representative and the filing of the probate estate. So is sometimes people will just pay creditors without any kind of proof of anything. You know, they're like, oh, and there's fraud. I mean, there's lots of fraud. I had somebody try and submit a claim that they were owed, X amount of dollars because they took care of these people, and it was all fraud. I mean, it was just completely fraud, and the people were gonna try and pay it, and I'm like, well, let's just hold on. We got 4 months to see what's going on here, and so yeah, like you said, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of kind of clouded thinking, and I think that we just got to pause and kind of wait and see like, should we pay these claims? Should we dispute these claims? Um, and kind of what's best for the estate. So I think that's maybe one do, one don't. So yeah, that's kind of what I'd advise people to do.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And I'm kind of curious because I actually don't know the answer to this. As far as how does the
Hopefully I
court
do.
look yeah, you probably do. How does the court look at real estate market values as opposed to, because we're obviously not certified and licensed appraisers in the state of
Sure.
Michigan. Whereas I know according to like, everything I've read or know about the IRS law and stuff like that, when you go towards filing or closing an estate from a
Yep.
tax perspective, the IRS wants that a singular number for fair
Yeah.
market value to determine that step up basis. So I know that they prefer to look at like a licensed appraiser
Mhm.
versus, say, just the market opinion of a real estate agent.
Yeah. So depends on what kind of probate we're in. So if we're in formal probate versus informal probate, I'll start with informal. So the with informal, what what the court's already established is like, hey, we don't need to be involved in this. We're okay with you as the personal representative, um, fulfilling your duties to the estate to get the highest price value. So the court's really not interested in something like that unless a beneficiary decides that whatever is been accepted maybe as an offer or proposed as an offer, maybe they don't feel that that's correct. So they can file an objection, and then there could be a hearing on that. And then a court would probably want an appraisal. That's what we would definitely do. To have an appraisal for that court hearing and make that determination.
Mhm.
Maybe the beneficiary would have their own appraisal, and then a lot of times it's like with courts, it's like let's cut the baby in the middle, and and we'll divide, add up both and divide by two. So and then that's when the court's involved, then that kind of applies to the formal probate too. So like if we're going to make a sell the property, they may want an appraisal if someone's going to question the value of that. So, um, but then like sometimes it's like you see this, I'm sure, like market bears what the market will bear, right? So like we got it's a free market in terms of who can make offers, and what the pros and cons of the property kind of determine where the offers come in and things like that. But that's kind of how I think courts look at appraisals and pricing and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, like, doing it long enough that there's kind of this little bit of an art to it. I mean, obviously,
Yep.
when you're looking at properties where every house is the same as the one next to it, real easy to come up with a reliable value. But, and, especially some of those houses in rural communities or things like that where there really is no homogeneous, can be
Yeah.
challenging to find a fair value. So, I do know for myself, even though obviously I'm not licensed or certified appraiser, I made sure to get our, the pricing strategy advisor that National Association of Realtors offers. So it is kind of one of the higher designations that you can have in being able to understand and establish market prices for sure. Let's see here. I think in regards to kind of also real estate was just what responsibilities that person has, like specifically during the probate process towards that house. We kind of mentioned some of the securing, but I was wondering if we could kind of talk a little bit about what you see from the logistics of like maintaining the property as well as like how do we fund that? How does, because
Yeah.
I know sometimes a lot of estates where there's
Yep.
equity, but there's not cash. So what do
Yeah.
we do?
Right, right. Yeah, so that's a great question. So a lot of times we run into that situation where there's no cash, right? There's no cash um to maybe so to go back, like the person representative will be responsible for like property taxes, things like that. Keeping the heat on in the winter, things like that. The one thing the probate code kind of provides for is that anybody that's spent any money on behalf of keeping the estate going for things like that, like property taxes, things like that, they're like the first level creditor that would be able to receive reimbursement for their what they've paid for on behalf of the estate. So that would be something that and that can be a struggle too. I mean, like sometimes people already have their own home and what do they need to do? So they may try and borrow money, things like that. So and there are other kind of probate companies that will try and finance from equity and things like that. So, but that can get messy and especially and can be kind of predatory too. So I've kind of seen some of that as well. But but yeah, you just kind of have to keep this moving until the house gets sold um and then you've got the estate account where the proceeds will go into and then um can seek reimbursement from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we kind of obviously went over the timeline a little bit. I think we kind of mentioned it like in a couple, you kind of mentioned the 5 month period in the state of Michigan, but I was just wondering if you could say like kind of what you see as a timeline perspective,
Yeah.
from the day that, we do the filing and open probate, about approximately how long the average, I know it's going to totally vary based on
Yeah.
all of the
Yep.
estate, the family members involved. But let's say your average one that runs fairly smoothly, what kind of timeline we
Yeah.
might be looking at.
What we're finding is like what can usually hold up the time when the death that happens is like trying to file taxes. So like how do you got to wait till the ability to file taxes for the following year. That's one of the big things that holds up a lot of even simple probates. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the biggest thing. But I'd say, um, between like the shortest would be 5 months. The most I've ever seen as I have one going on that's like 3 years, which is unfortunate. And so I'm say about 9 months to 12 months and that kind of, and a lot of times we're just waiting for accountant to be able to file taxes and get
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, we're kind of lucky in this market because I know if like probably, 10 years ago or 15 years ago back in the recession,
Right.
probably would have been a different ball game when houses were sitting
For
on the
sure.
market for a year or yeah,
Yeah.
you were probably just, selling them at a real low value. So
Right. Yep.
so I'm just going to close us out then here. I know this topic is always a heavy topic. People don't really like talking about it. It can be very emotional. I think hopefully we made it a little bit more clear today for anybody. And just one last question is if you had just like a single piece of advice that there's an executor out there watching this right now, what would be your single simple piece of advice that we can leave them with?
I would definitely at least get a consultation with a lawyer. That's kind of self-serving, but like just being honest, it's a very complex process, and you can get into trouble, especially if you've got siblings or other beneficiaries that maybe there's a lot of animosity, and that can make it very difficult to try and get things done. So just getting somebody to give you some advice, I think is something that people should do if you're in that role.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of probably, I don't know if you'd agree. It almost seems like even if you're, you don't know if your parents wanted you to maybe be the personal representative or that kind of thing is like as the sibling or the child, somebody just needs to probably step up and get the process started instead of waiting for the other sibling to get the ball rolling and that kind of a thing.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll have our information. I'm going to put it in the description and everything like that. So if they want to get in
Cool.
contact with you, the website and everything like that will be linked in there, and they can get in touch with you. Obviously, you can help. So if we even have somebody outside of obviously the Lansing area, I imagine being
Yeah.
licensed in the entire state of Michigan, you can help
Yep.
them as well. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, even if you're, somewhere up in the UP. You guys can reach out to Nick. I think he'd be happy to help you. And obviously, if anybody's in the greater Lansing area, I would also be happy to help them with any of the property solutions as well that they may need.